Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. Today I have with me Trixi Menhardt, and she has lived and worked in Europe, Asia, and North America. Prior to becoming a coach, she worked in corporate business development with a global reach, enjoying her career while being a mother. In 2013, Trixi returned to California after 3 years in India. Along the way, her horses taught her to listen, be patient, and always end on a good note, which works equally well with small children and irate corporate clients. Her passion is to guide women and men to help finding happiness in their career, because we all have to make a living. And imagine what it would be like if we can enjoy the journey. Trixi is an ICF certified coach and studied with mentors Alan Menye Erickson and Steve Mitten, who taught her to follow her heart and that there will always be forward motion. Trixi, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm just grateful that you have decided to spend an hour or so, whatever it is, with me to have a conversation.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm equally excited.
So the first thing I'm curious about, because I work with animals. That's my day job. What inspired you to tune into your horses more? Like, was it something you always innately had, or is it something that switched in your consciousness that said, hey, maybe they have something to teach me?
Yeah, great question. And great to hear you work with animals. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started out with horses, I didn't know very much, although I had grown up riding, but that was different. I didn't own a horse. So once I owned my own horse, I spent a lot of time working with trainers. And immediately I thought, wow, this is 1,200 pound animal, and there's no way we can control them through force. So that was my first learning. And I think really going into the mindset of the horse, that was my trainer in California, Rick Hung. He's still in Cupertino. And one time I complained to him that my horse was really anxious, like when we went to a gate, she wouldn't stop and she would spin and she would rear. And he said, well, where are you at that point? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, are you at the gate? And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm at the trailhead. So he taught me that wherever I am, my horse is. And so I've really tuned into this. And right now I'm at the point where I go and I see my horse, and she's my emotional reflection. Like if I'm having a bad day, she's like, oh, you know what? Not so sure about you. And if I'm having a good day, she wants to live in my pocket.
I love that, because I absolutely love working with horses because they pick up on energy so quickly.
Yes, they can hear your heartbeat 20 steps away or something like that. So really being able to regulate your emotions when you want to work with a horse, that's key.
I had an opportunity a couple of years ago where I went to see a farrier, and he said, well, I have this horse, but she's kind of old and she's kind of cranky and I don't know what to do with her. So she let me work on her, and I literally just put my hand on her, and I do body talk. And so it's a multi-modality feeling thing. And usually I channel and I write things down and I record it, and it's a whole system. But this time it flew through me. Whatever she needed was coming through me so fast, and my hand was on her, that I didn't even know what happened. It was so fast because she was in tune with my heart. And when we got done, she did a full body shake. And I was like, that is so cool. She integrated it. And he said, that was a fly. I'm like, no, it wasn't a fly.
Yeah.
So I love that you're tuning into their intuition, because they help us regulate ourselves because they're so heart-based.
Yes. 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 And they can only run away. They have no other way of defending themselves.
Mhm. Yeah. So what called you? Was it the horses that called you to start working as a coach, or what called you into that? that realm?
No. I know there's people that use horses for therapy and coaching, but I wanted to keep that separate. And what got me into coaching was that around 2010, my family and I, we moved to India. And I actually had a also job there. It was my husband that got transferred, but I also had a job there. And then very quickly I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. You know, the local Indian culture was very different. And even my US based boss, he's like, yeah, I knew this wasn't going to work out for you. So we parted in peace. And then I took a year off. And it was the
Mhm.
first time in my adult life that I didn't work. And it was a big transformation for me because up until then, I had defined myself through my work.
Mhm.
If you ask me what I do or tell me about myself, I would never even speak about my children. I would talk about my work. So it was my identity, and I had a whole year to let go. And then during that year, when people asked me what I do, I said, I play. And they said, oh, you play an instrument? And I said, no, I play all day long.
I
And
love
so there
that.
were a couple of things I did. I connected with a great horseman in Bangalore. He was, or still is, the nephew of the Maharaja of Mysore, which sounds all very pompous, but really
Mhm.
all it meant is that he had a ranch in the middle of Bangalore on
Okay.
Palace Grounds. And so I rode horses with him, and I thought, I'm going to get this out of my system. I'm going to ride 7 days a week. Well, yeah, within a month or so, I'm like, okay, that's not my passion. So the year of playing it out allowed me to play with a lot of things. And at the end of it, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And one of my friends from California is a coach, and she asked me, well, what are the elements of your work that you enjoyed? And I didn't miss a beat. And I said, oh my God, I love developing people. So,
Mhm.
well, that's what a coach does.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it because like when we tune into that space of what brings us joy,
Yeah.
it's it's always this it's a fascinating remembrance of either what we've always done or something that we did as a child, and that getting back in touch with that part of us
Yeah.
is such a fun discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I use that a lot in my work with clients now. I don't do a lot of career transition work, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it lands in my lap. And
Mhm.
then apply that same technique. Like, let's go back to, all the jobs, all the experiences you ever had. What is the essence of what you love? And
Mhm.
piece that together. That's your future direction.
That's beautiful. And how do you help clients with their existing jobs? I'm just curious, like,
So I've been doing this for almost 12 years now, and I'm doing a lot of executive coaching,
okay.
leadership development coaching, and also in my private practice. So in leadership development coaching, people come to me often because their boss thinks, oh, it's a good idea. Sometimes they have this notion that it's training, while coaching is not training. And once we get to the heart of it, I always tell my clients, up here, you know exactly what you want, right? You're here and you want to go there.
Mhm.
And curiously, what's blocking you? And it's like anything we want to do in life, right? We want to be a better parent. We want to lose 10 pounds. We want to become this world famous chef. All these things we want to do. And why are we not there yet? And it all comes down to, as you know, right? It's you have to get yourself out of the way.
Yeah.
What I work with my clients on is, in the beginning, you have to build trust and intimacy. So in the beginning, there's a lot of listening, but pretty quickly, I will explain that this all happens in here and in
Mhm.
your gut. And no matter what you want to change about yourself, that's where we have to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had many life experiences where my gut has told me one thing and I've kind of ignored it, much to my detriment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So my practice now is like first it's heart, then it's gut, and then it's head. And if I get all three in alignment, then I'll be able to go do whatever it is that I'm feeling intuitively called to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not that I want to promote Jeff Bezos, but obviously he's built an empire
Right.
and he openly speaks about that all his decisions came from the gut and then he wrapped the data around it.
Yeah. It's a different way of approaching life because like I my first, I don't know how many years, I thought I was an academic and
Hmm.
I went that route. And I remember my last year, I'm writing my dissertation, and my mantra was, I am not paying the student loans without the degree.
Yes.
I didn't care about the dissertation. I didn't care about the research, even though I had prior to the last year when I actually had to sit down and write the damn thing. I was like, I am so done with this. I am so done with this. And I gained 100 pounds
No way.
because it was so not what I wanted to do anymore. But I also didn't want to pay the student loans without the degree because that just didn't feel right. So, so I graduate and I get a job working at LL Bean's warehouse in Maine for 3 months, and I walked 10 miles a day. And that felt good because I was using my body again and I lost 70 pounds. Um, because I was doing something more in alignment than sitting and writing all day.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a writer, that type of writing it was not the highest calling for me. So I know what it's like to not follow your heart. Even though that's what I thought I wanted, because that's what my parents kind of expected of me. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
are you encountering that a lot with people where they follow somebody else's
Absolutely.
expectation?
Absolutely. And in tech, we have so many people that come from China and India, and it's just dialed up there. I mean, in India, it's typically, the father literally will gather his children and say, you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, and you become an engineer.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they do.
Wow.
And to some extent, it happens in the US, right? You are good in math, so you go into science.
Mhm.
Matter that you really love arts. So,
Yeah.
my own daughter, she just graduated from college, and I'm so proud of her because she understands, she's very good in science. She got a degree in science, but she also is an artist. And she absolutely understands this yin and yang. She doesn't
Mhm.
want to be a full-time artist. She doesn't want to be a full-time scientist, but she knows how this needs to go together.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that because there's what I have learned to call it is our multi-dimensional selves, because there's an aspect of me that loves to meditate and ground. There's another aspect of me that loves to cook and bake. And then there's another aspect that loves to take my old BMW around corners at 60 miles an hour. And they're all aspects of me.
Yes, yes.
And I don't want to do any one of them consistently, but to have that allowance to accept all of those aspects is it's really healthy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I mentioned earlier. If you told me that I had to ride my horse every single day, I'm like, no, don't want to do that. Can't.
Right,
Yeah. But there
right.
are people that are more single-minded. So it's really good
Mhm.
to recognize that about ourselves and really embrace who we are because, I don't know who said that, but the first circle of hell is comparing yourself to others.
Mhm.
And while that makes so much sense up here,
Right.
we do it a lot. We always compare ourselves, right? So if you have that BMW that you take care of and then you haven't taken it out for a week, your inner saboteur will say, well, why do you have this car? So there's this constant self-talk going on
Mhm.
versus right now, you're your best self. You own this. You say, oh, I drive it once in a while and I have fun. And then I do other things.
Oh yeah, especially around corners.
Yes.
But yeah, I know it's that balance of like, there was at one point there was a part of me that's like, but no, I'm this meditator. I love grounding an hour a day, like blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but I have this, this beautiful, solid old BMW that I just love driving. And to honor all of those aspects and not shame anyone is like a critical part of like loving yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, since we're already talking about self-love, I think that is, for me, that is the holy grail in human development, that we can love ourselves unconditionally. I don't think we'll ever be there, but we can get better at it. Because if you don't love yourself, you constantly listen to these inner voices that tell you, watch out, be careful, you're gonna see this, people are like that. It's really the ability to ground yourself and say, hey, I'm not gonna make a stupid decision here, but my gut keeps really telling me something here.
Yeah. How do you see that unfolding in the corporate world? Because like I'm self-employed. I've been out of corporations since 2010, so I'm kind of feral. But like, how does it work in a corporate structure where somebody's like opening, like they have that dissatisfaction and they're looking to find more coherence in themselves?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, I like that you describe yourself as feral. I'm going to steal that. So, yeah, it's interesting because I've been out of corporate also the same amount of time, and then I see it through the eyes of my clients.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've written 2 chapters, but I'm writing a book about this because I think people need to hear this. They need to hear, I don't want to call it something like the underbelly of corporate America, but it is a pretty ugly underbelly.
Yeah,
And what people need to hear is that they're not alone,
right, right.
because we always look at others and see, oh, this person has it so together. And
Hmm.
the more power they have, the more together they have it.
Right.
So what I advocate with my clients is to first normalize it. Say,
Mm,
nobody has it together. And
right.
one of my mentors, Shirzad Shamin, he has a really good TED talk about it, where he takes out these little index cards and he says, these are things that my clients wrote down when I asked them to write something that nobody knows about them.
Oh,
And
wow.
the audience turns like into a funeral parlor. And the
Really?
statements are like, I'm a fraud. I'm going to be found out any minute. I don't have a relationship with my children. I'm going to die alone. My life has no purpose. Now, Shirzad coaches captains of industry in Silicon Valley, and these are their thoughts. So I always use this little video with my
Yeah,
clients to say, look, your CEO might be on one of those index cards.
yeah, yeah. It's
I also want people to have empathy. I mean, tech is in a meltdown. It started with the Google layoffs over a year ago, and it keeps happening, and it has really shaken the foundation of people who used to thrive working in tech. And
mhm,
now there's a lot of fear. There's a
mhm,
lot of political behavior. Everyone is rushing into AI. So
yeah,
if they make a job decision, is it AI? Is it AI? That's where the money is going. So it's crazy times, but what I really see in my clients, um, fingers crossed, they've all made it. What I see in them is an inner resilience. Also an inner resilience that, they're in their late 30s, mid 40s,
mhm,
that they probably have made enough money. So if the shoe drops, they're not going to be out on the street.
right.
Now, that's really something to wrap your head around when you've been defined by your career for 20
Yeah.
years or more. But at the end of the day, you know that, right? You've done the work that nothing comes from when you are
Oh,
in
yeah.
the of your fear or that, fight or flight mode. Nothing good happens.
Right. And because I've done so much inner work on myself, A couple years ago, I opened an old resume and I didn't know who it was. I looked at it, I was like, really? Like that's apparently what I did like 20 years ago. And it was just like such a weird disconnect because I don't do any of those things anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't like, I have a PhD, that's not who I am. I have a podcast, that's not who I am. Like there's so many things that I have in terms of gifts, but none of them define me. But it took a lot of work for me to break down that identity of what I thought I was, because it's so prominent in our programs and conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. And what prompted you to start breaking that down?
My dad dying and seeing his spirit scatter across the universe.
Mm.
When I walked into the room and I looked at his body and I didn't recognize him, I said, "Where's Dad?" And my mom's like, "That's your father." I'm like, "That is not my dad," because he was jaundiced and he looked like a wax figure. And I'm like, he wasn't in it. His soul wasn't in it. And so I said that 3 times, and after the third time, I felt this like firework above my head, and I looked up and I felt his soul scatter across the universe.
Mm.
And I was like, and internally I went, I don't know anything. I don't know a single thing, because all of my preconceptions of what I thought I was got shattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I spent 7 years listening to a meditation from Vishen from Mind Valley that were like 7 steps of meditation. And one of them was forgiveness. So I spent every day for 7 years forgiving everybody I could think of and then forgiving myself. And that's what opened me up to a crazy journey of even deeper self-discovery, because I realized that all the things I thought were real aren't, and the only thing that is real is the soul that animates my body and how it wants to express itself.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's an amazing experience.
Thank you. Thank you. But that's all that's ultimately what we're here for, is to remember on a deeper level what brings us joy, what makes us who we are, because each one of us is so unique. We have so many gifts to bring to the world.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, we are hardwired to have this automatic negative thought or belief because, you know, 500, 1,000 years ago, you had to protect yourself or you wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
And our brain still lives in the dark ages.
Mhm. And we have
So
a reptilian brain, so
I know. And so anything, meditation, mindfulness, any like really practicing going into your body, all of those are things that help you, lessen that signal in your head.
Yeah.
And it will always be there. Yeah.
Mhm. But it's, when we get in that state of, let's say, a layoff, I'll use that as an example. Your understanding of who you thought you were is shattered. But that's the opportunity to find out who you really are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really deep work. And I do it with some of my clients, but it's not something that I actively promote because
Yeah,
it's hard to see their pain.
I understand that. Yeah, being an empath and watching somebody process their feelings is awkward at best. I've done
Yeah.
it.
And
It's fun.
people they need to come and they need to cry and they need to vent and they need to process. And it's hard work and I do it, if
Yeah.
If it happens to somebody I've been working with, if somebody walks in my door and says, so and so told me you can help me, I'm like, of course I'll help you. But
Yeah.
it's not, it's hard work. It's really hard work. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's such a journey to, I'll just, because I've done it before, of holding space for somebody who's going through their own journey. It's like, okay, I'm not going to take this on. But it's hard because we're compassionate too. And so really, making sure that you're doing your own self-care while you're doing this work is pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what I know is that everyone gets better. I
Yeah.
mean, I honestly believe in one of Shirzad's teachings, which is everything that happens can be turned into a gift and opportunity.
Mm.
First, it's the gift of knowledge. You
Yep.
know a lot more when something bad has happened,
Oh yeah.
but then being able to turn it into an opportunity, right? That takes mental strength and that takes healing, and you really have to walk that path between allowing yourself to grieve,
Mhm.
because the loss of your job is the loss of a life.
Yeah.
It's who you are. There's so much wrapped up in this, your financial stability, it's who you are, what you do every day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
colossal, we know that.
Yeah.
So allow yourself to grieve,
Mhm.
but at the same time, don't get stuck in the grief. So
Mhm.
I use methodology from grief management, and grief is actually a positive emotion because grief is love. You
Mhm.
know, being sad about something that you lost is not a negative emotion.
Right.
But again, I find it hard as a coach to have that huge amount of empathy. And at the same time, when is the right moment to say, okay, can we look up to the sky for a minute?
Yeah.
That's really the walk there.
Well, it's a balance and especially like, because you're dealing with a multicultural environment, so each culture has different understandings of what crying is and what grief is, and holding space for that, because some, I suspect, um, have a much more difficult time of processing feelings than others.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's people that are hyperactive. We call that the restless saboteur, that voice that always says, okay, over there's the next shiny object. And they can be incredibly creative and entertaining and bubbly, but they never slow down to sit with their emotions. And I work with a client who is off the charts in his restlessness. And again, I have to have the guts to say, can we slow down for a moment and look at your emotions?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I noticed it with myself. I've been doing this pretty regularly for 15 years, and I still catch myself. I was going to meditate before we got on, and I could not quiet my mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm aware of you. I see you. Let's go get you a snack, okay? Because like clearly you're going to distract me until I can't sit. And so, I honor myself when I'm in that state, but I
Yeah,
also don't let myself get away with it for too long.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this practice of PQ reps, so it's called positive intelligence reps, and you start out with an app, but at some point, it becomes second nature to you. And a PQ rep is just a clever name for mini meditation. Because again, people that are very brainy, very science oriented, they're like, meditation, that's something that you do in yoga class. But a PQ rep, you do all day long.
Mhm.
If I'm nervous or unsure about talking to you, I can PQ rep on your face, I can PQ rep on your background. Anyways, um, I do it all the time. I had to make a business decision a couple of days ago and my head was spinning. You shouldn't, you promised, don't. And so take yourself out of the game and rep on it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. eventually you'll get clarity. Eventually I'll be able to connect to my gut, to what I really want to do with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important when we recognize that we've been hijacked. So
Mhm.
I was in this class. It was called PQ Mastery. It was a 6 months, very intense self-development program. And at the end, we had this, of course, it was online. We had this big celebration. And Shazad broke out in this crazy rap dance. He said, I caught myself. I got hijacked just before I walked into this meeting. And then they start playing the music and the whole class starts dancing. I caught myself. I caught myself. And I will never forget that, because for me, that's what I teach now. It's like you will get hijacked all the time, all the time. But the point is, can you catch yourself?
Oh yeah.
Can you celebrate versus the, oh my God, I'm so stupid. It happened again. Why did I do that? Right? So that is one of the big shifts that I try to teach people, to say, we get hijacked all the time. The opportunity is to realize it. It might take you an hour. It can be a really long time to be
Right.
hijacked. But the moment you realize it, say, wow, I caught myself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the phrase you're using, because I know distraction is one of my go-tos, right? Like, and it's usually like a YouTube or something on my phone or food, or like I'm a master at catching my distractions. Sometimes if I have something really big in my subconscious that doesn't want to be seen, I will distract myself for a few days. And I'll watch it because I'm like, okay, I'm distracting myself, but then I get bored with the distractions now, which is really cool. So maybe I'll do one day of massive distraction, and the next day I'll try it and I get like 5, 10 minutes into it. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna meditate now, because I've conditioned myself so much to catch it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you describe your distractions, because to me it sounds like it's this head rush. It's just so exciting.
Oh, it's like, please don't let me don't make me look in me,
Yeah.
right? And I can feel it because I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the tortilla chips I ate right before we got on, that was a complete distraction. So I like, okay, you can distract yourself. You're gonna have to eat each one very slowly. So that was a compromise. It was like, oh, I can't mindlessly eat. Dang it. I'm mindfully eating. And so because of that, it wasn't fun. It wasn't the fun distraction that I wanted it to be, because I was just going to mindlessly eat. And I knew it, I felt it, but it was like, okay, I'm bringing in this compromise here. If I'm going to eat mindlessly, guess what? You're not going to eat mindlessly. You're going to eat mindfully. And even little things like that really help us catch ourselves.
Yeah. 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 I mean, mindful eating is such a big deal. So many, many years ago, my acupuncturist, I always call him this gifted redneck. He grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but he was an amazing acupuncturist, and he had a PhD in Chinese medicine. And one of his mantras was, he said, if you don't have time to sit down and eat mindfully without distractions, yes, go to a restaurant, meet a friend, but don't eat while you're reading or doing something else. If you don't make time for your food, don't eat it.
Yeah.
I try to practice this. I've gotten really good at it, but of course I don't do it all the time, right?
Right.
Again, I'm like, okay, I have 5 minutes to read this article, but it's the idea of, okay, do I do it all the time, or can I eat mindfully most of the time?
Right. Right. And it's just, and even if we don't, if we miss a day or two, there's no shame in it. I mean, we're learning how to reprogram ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody mentioned to me yesterday that book, the Atomic Habits, and I think that is one of the greatest books to remind people that it's really minute changes, like change something every day, And, if you change 1% every day and how that stacks up over time, because where we fall apart is that, oh, let's just not eat chips. Yeah, no, no.
Right.
But you can eat them mindfully. That's an improvement. So
Right.
really, that stacking up where you want to hit, small increments. You were still eating the chips, and if I had watched you, I probably couldn't even have told the difference.
Right. But I could, because I was actually tasting the flavor and the texture, and I would complete one before I'd pick another one up, which I do, but like much quicker, because I'm not paying attention to the flavors and the salt and the like I wasn't fully engaged in what I was eating. And that's okay, but like because I noticed I was distracted from the meditation, I'm like, we're not gonna go all the way and completely distract myself.
Yeah.
So it really is habits.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
practice habits.
Habits are everything. And another thing that I find fascinating about habits and preferences that we have inherited them, right? That we are so genetically programmed.
Epigenetics is a real thing.
Yeah.
So grateful for Bruce Lipton for discovering it. But yeah, I will watch things like I'll notice subconscious patterns that will show up in my field. I'm like, yeah, I don't remember ever doing that, but I'm noticing it in me. I wonder where this came from. And it's an ancestral pattern. I'm like, okay, that makes sense now. I can be more compassionate than I mean, I should be compassionate anyways, but like even more compassionate because it's something I learned.
Yeah.
It's not something that I chose. Well, I chose unconsciously, but it's like there's a lot of stuff we picked up on.
Yeah. 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 Fascinating.
Mhm. I'm gonna ask you this one, just popped in my head. What has been your favorite experience with a client?
I've had this experience with multiple of my clients,
Okay.
and so maybe I'll just describe one of them. So,
Okay.
so people are in a career transition situation. They decide they want to get out of where they are, or they, are offered an opportunity. And when I can work with them and really peel away the layers of, oh, there's the title, there's the money, there's all of this,
hmm
but you take it back to, is this the right opportunity for them?
hmm
Is this the right culture? That team that they're walking into,
hmm
does that work for them? Is that going to support them? Is their manager, in many cases, it's the CEO, the CTO, the CMO, is that person going to take them under their wings? All those,
hmm
all those parameters that are not visible,
Right.
that will truly ensure that they're in the right place, that they're successful, that they can work, and balance work and life. That is such a big shift for people. And
Yeah.
um, and I remember one time a client was referred to me and he said, well, my friend told me that you helped her with this. And he said, how does one do that?
That's
and,
beautiful.
and he said, well, I have no problem interviewing and getting all these opportunities. I just have walked into so many wrong roles and jobs and I'm burned out and I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of my favorite scenario. And now as my work is more shifting towards people that are moving to the next phase, like, am I ready to let go of that career?
Mm.
I think my biggest aha moment with clients is when they say, you know what, I got another 5 years here and then I can retire, or, college will be paid off, whatever it is they're worried about. And I don't need to climb the ladder anymore. I'm good here. That
That's
is a big shift for people, because for 20, 30 years, that's all they knew, right? You go to
great.
school, you excel, you get that job, you get that spouse, you get, right? You're achieving. And
Right,
there's the idea, I'll be happy when. And every
right.
time you step up, there's a brief moment of happiness. And then the next thing comes along.
Right.
And to really make that shift to say, I'm happy now,
Mhm.
I am a product manager. I am an engineering director. I don't need to run this company. That is profound, really profound. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it's because they've seen sickness and death amongst their friends and family. They realize that you're not going to live forever.
Right.
They realize that their children are more important than anything else. There's this profound shift away from having to achieve to, I would say, living well.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love hearing that because I have known so many people that have been caught up in that paradigm of the next, the next, the next. And to accept and appreciate and be grateful for what you have is such a profound shift because then you're not chasing anymore. Because how many how many material things do you need? Because they don't bring you joy. My dad was a hoarder, so I know this firsthand. I watched it. And he had thousands of books and thousands of shirts and thousands and thousands and thousands of things, and he was obese
Yeah,
because he couldn't find the happiness outside of him.
yeah,
He
yeah,
didn't have the tools to know how to look for it within.
yeah, yeah. I know that's so profound when we look back at our parents. Both my parents are deceased, and look back and see, because I wasn't a coach when my dad was alive, and I was thinking, could I have helped him? I don't know, but I remember my dad died young. He died at 63 of a massive heart attack, and um, he was bigger than life always. So he had a life fully lived. But I remember my last conversation with him was, so I'm originally from Austria, so I was visiting him, and my dad always liked to do things. So we went to Innsbruck, and we went to this nice hotel, and we did some hikes, and it's a couple of days, just the two of us. And I said to him, Dad, I know that you don't love my mom, and that's okay. And I know that you have found a partner who is your soulmate. And I said, it's totally okay with me if you want to make that shift. You know, I know you will take care of mom. I just don't want you to drive yourself crazy the way you're doing it right now.
Mm.
And my dad thanked me for that. And he said, I do have a responsibility in life. And so that was literally my last conversation with my dad.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, could we have helped our parents with what
I
we
would
know?
love to. My mom is still alive, and I started learning body talk 4 years ago, and I wanted to work on her, and she said, "No, I'm okay. I like my doctor." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I could help you with ancestral stuff and karmic stuff. Like I could help you with things." And she's like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, "Okay, I can't help you then, because it has to be her free will. I can't impose anything."
Mhm,
And she was pretty darn clear to me very many times that she was happy with her choices.
mhm. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. I mean, my God, that leads to that whole can of worms, people that don't need help, quote unquote. Everyone needs help. I need help.
right,
I see a counselor. I work with coaches. I'm in it, and I've been in it for 14 years now.
yeah,
And so when you come across people, and it's mostly, when I work with a client and I say, their partner, their spouse for their children, you know, whoever they worry about, doesn't want to work with a coach or a therapist. That is really heartbreaking. And I mean, to some extent, you know, my children's generation, at least in our kind of like socioeconomic neighborhood, majority of them works with a therapist or a coach or has worked with somebody.
Yeah, that's
Um,
beautiful.
but I think my generation doesn't, and it's so hard to see that when a client does the work and really gets to, you know, who they are. And we work a lot on empathy,
Yeah.
empathy for self and empathy for others, and they can develop deep empathy for their spouses,
Mhm,
but it's only goes so far.
mhm.
If that family member or that friend
Right.
doesn't need help. So
Right.
you know, that's what makes me think when you describe your mom who says, I don't need this.
Right. Because
If you come to me and you say, I'm going to do this work, I'm like, Sophia, sign me up. Yes.
no, I get it because I'm the same way. It's like I know I've got things that I can't see, and I want to be the best version of who I can be. So whatever that is, I can't see everything. So please help because, and that's where it's more I'm not expecting you to fix me because there's nothing to fix. But if you can see things that I can't, please, because I get to heal them myself, but I can't see everything. So that's how we help each other.
Yeah, that's really it. You know, you see things that people can't see themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I am feeling it's time for the last question, and the last question is, how do people find you?
All right. So I'm gonna try to use the name of my company because it's pretty catchy. So my company is called Red Pants Coaching. The color red, pants coaching. So that's my website. That's how you find me on LinkedIn. And red pants stand for, you know, that every day we get up and we put our pants on. And sometimes that's hard, sometimes that's easy, sometimes they fit, sometimes they're too big, sometimes they're too tight. So red pants coaching is a name that my business partner and I came up with. And it just means being playful and taking every day as it comes.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the work you do in the world, and thank you for who you are.
Thank you, Sophia. It was really wonderful getting to know you.
Thank you.